We haven't hung out in a while. That's it. That's the message. When was the last time you socialized? With friends, with family, with your pets? I say that last part because I do have my little friend here. She's actually my daughter. She's so small. For the many of you that don't know me, by the way, and truly I don't think or remember having her on any of these videos, but this is my daughter, Emerald. I named her Emerald because she has a little green patch that I don't think you can see on the top of her head, right on top of where her little eyes are, and I thought it was cute. And also, my birthday is May, and my birthstone is Emerald. Even though I'm pretty sure she was born either late March or early April, so I think she's an Aries. I got her from the pet store 10 years ago. 2016. April 2016. There were a lot of really cool things about that experience, I think. And I guess I would like to share that with you in the presence of my baby. Emerald. So she is a fancy leopard gecko. And one of the biggest challenges in raising her and taking care of her is that leopard geckos, they shed like snakes and bugs. But these little dudes, they eat their own shed, and if they don't properly get all of that old skin off, and I think I've talked about this in previous videos, where if they don't get it all off of their little legs and fingers and whatnot, it will suffocate those parts off. So when she was little at the pet store, I found out that one of the policies that the employees have is that they do not help the lizards shed. And so when I brought her home, she had little fingies that were turning colors already. And by the time I realized what had happened, she had already lost a couple of fingertips. They do not grow back, so she just has little nubbies. And they usually can survive at least the fingers falling off. Yeah, you can see this little hand right here is more nubby than this one. She lost these two little fingies in the middle, fingy tips. So no claws on some of her toes. She was so small. When I first got her, I think this was back when I had a green iPhone 5, I think. So it was like a Crayola, green, and she could just fit right on top of my phone, and she was within the parameters, and that phone was quite small. I have now the 14, I believe, and I believe she is now bigger than that. after 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, she's bigger than the iPhone 14 now. She's gotten quite big. But when I first brought her home, she was this tiny little thing, little itty bitty witty bitty thing. And she's actually smaller than all of the other geckos in the tank. So if you've not been to the pet store to stare at some lizards, I highly recommend it. Personally, the most entertaining pet lizards are the bearded dragons. They're small, but they look like they have little Muppet mouths, and I think they're very cute and they're very energetic. They're daytime animals, whereas Emerald, despite it being the daytime, is nocturnal. Leopard geckos are nocturnal, usually. They're a desert dwelling type, but yes, getting sweepies. They're a desert dwelling type. However, one thing that I ran into while taking care of Emerald was that how do I say this? The instructions, the general instructional care and keeping of this version of a gecko are great. And also, there is something to be said about taking care of an animal by listening and watching and observing the animal. One of the things about female leopard geckos is that they tend to have a lot of ovarian problems. And so they tend to die very early. The weird thing is, Emerald, I thought, was a boy when I first brought him home. And so Emerald always had male pronouns. Up until, I believe, year 2 or 3, when I took her to the vet. And they officially gendered her as female. She has never laid eggs, and I believe that a lot of female geckos, depending on their environment, will just lay eggs. But I have never seen an egg in her tank. And so, for all intents and purposes, Emerald is trans. Regardless, female geckos tend to die very fast in comparison to the males. And so, because of the ovarian things that tend to go wrong regularly in female leopard geckos, their life expectancy is usually between 5 and 7 years or something like that, whereas the male geckos can live up to 15. And I think the oldest recorded one, at least the last time I checked, which was a long time ago, so I could be totally wrong now, but when I checked a while ago, the oldest gecko to ever endure was recorded at 30 years old. And so when I first brought Emerald home, I was like, I'm under the impression that this is my life partner. This one right here. That's 30 years of my life. So when I got her in 2016, I'm 2016 to 2026, 2036, 2046. So in my brain, I'm this animal could live until I'm 50. And at the time, I remember feeling a few different things and experiencing a lot of different things. So Emerald, This is 10 minutes and I'm talking about this animal. She's 10, so 10 is her lucky number. When I first considered getting a gecko, I actually did a lot of research. And originally, I was doing research for snakes. I really wanted a snake. But I also wanted a snake that didn't eat other animals. I wanted an insectivore snake. And I discovered that one of the only, if not the only, purely insectivore snake was, I think they're called the Decay's brown snake or something like that. And they're tiny little micro miniature cute little snakes. They kind of look like worms and they eat insects. However, they are not domesticated. They are not a domesticated breed. They're 100% wild animals and should not be, like, no one needs to domesticate them. They need to be left the fuck alone. I respect that. So I moved on. I kept looking and researching. And 11:11 on the timer, I looked up leopard geckos, and I actually really wanted either a pure white one or a pure black one. And I believe this is after How to Train Your Dragon. So I was looking for a toothless, I was. Or like something like it, you know. And so then one day, I was with my mom. I was working retail at the time. And I want to say hold on. No, I'm right. Okay. I was thinking about my timeline here. So it's April of 2016 and I'm working and I'm training. I think I was training, or at least I was thinking about becoming some kind of management. I don't know, but I was working with someone and I had said 15 different times, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a lizard or a snake. I meet up with my mom after work at the pet store, and maybe a couple of days before that, I had gotten a check from my grandma. Not the one I'm taking care of, but my paternal grandmother. At this point, I'm 23, or I'm about to be 23, and I'm working retail. I'm working toward finishing my associate's degree, and it was taking me a long time. And this check was to ensure that I went to the college that she wanted me to, majoring in the field she wanted me to, working where she wanted me to work, and in exchange, like, that was, you know, in good faith, she sent me the money to buy a laptop, or no, actually, the money was just somehow to go to that college for that degree to do that job. Radio talk show hosting is what I was supposed to be doing. And at the time, I'm 23. I'm dating somebody living in Croatia. It was very, like, I mean, the relationship itself was actually really bad. Just not cool. And also, hadn't met the person yet in person, and also my laptop had just broken. It was weird. A lot of things were happening, and I needed a laptop, and I didn't want to go to that school, and I didn't want to do that job, and I didn't want to get that degree. I barely wanted to get the degree I was getting. And so instead, I could get a laptop. But then after that, this is like maybe a day or two later, is when I meet my mom at the pet store. I get in there, and I'm looking around, and the girl at the pet store was really sweet, very young, and we're looking at the tank, and there's a ton of these geckos in there. And like I said, if you haven't been on a field trip to the pet store to stare at some amphibians and reptiles, I highly recommend it. They're just weird. And they pile the babies in there. Because the babies don't have smoke with each other. Like, they don't have the hormones and the pheromones and the angst, I guess, to fight each other. Usually they're just sleeping all over each other, just layers of geckos on top of each other, just sleeping in all kinds of, like, contortions. And this little one here was the tiniest one in that tank. And right when the pet store clerk, the reptile helper, pulled out the tank for me to pick, to look at them. She offered for me to look at them, but I wasn't allowed. I don't think I was allowed. No, I was allowed. I was allowed to hold the geckos, whichever one. I saw this little one. She was so tiny. Like, I cannot stress to you enough how tiny she was comparatively. And so there's tons of other geckos, and one of these bigger ones grabbed onto her back leg and started yanking right in front of me, and I freaked. And so then, like, I think that the clerk actually, I'm trying to remember how this happened, but essentially, like, the clerk or the person working there kind of, like, broke it up, this one didn't get hurt or injured, and the other one and let go. And so then they were like, oh, they must be hungry, I need to feed them. And I was so sad. And so then I was like, can I hold this one? And they placed Emerald on my hand, and she just rested her whole belly and her whole body into my hand. And as you can see, she's braced. She's always braced when she's suspended in midair. And so she was, but eventually she rested her belly on me, which she does when she feels safer. And I felt immediately imprinted on. I was like, oh, you're coming home with me, bro. Except, I believe that I had not cashed the full check or something like that. And I think maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, the laptop happened after. But I had just gotten that check from my grandmother. No knowledge, I knew what I was supposed to do with it. And I did not do that. I asked them if they could put this little one on hold for me until the next day, knowing that she was only like $30, but I didn't have anything. I didn't have a tank, I didn't have food, I didn't have an enclosure, a heating pad, nothing. I knew everything I needed, and I had, in my research, I had done a budget. Excuse me. Confirmation burp. I'd done all this research, but I didn't have anything, and I wasn't ready. And then I got this check, and it was substantial, and it was useful. And even with the way that my bank operated, where like the first 200 would hit the same day, but the rest of it would come days later, I had not cashed that check. I had not deposited it, I should say. And so I went home. They said that they could not keep her for me. Did you just yawn? They said they could not keep her for me, and that I just needed to come back. And so I, at the time, was really like living a double life. I was spiritual and scholared and learning all about the Bible and trying to be a good Christian in front of everyone to survive. But behind closed doors and with like friends and coworkers, I was anything but those things. And so, hadn't gotten into smoking just yet, but I was definitely ready to be an alcoholic. I didn't have the money to be an alcoholic, but I wanted to drink. I wanted to destroy and decay. And that night, I remember being like, look, I don't really know that I believe that a God exists, but And I definitely don't believe in a Christian one. Y'all, like, whatever that was. Oop, Emerald's like, I don't believe in the Christian one. I believe in a different type of thing altogether. But whatever is up there listening to me, just, I know it seems silly, but please don't let any of the other lizards eat the one that I love. And I'm like, I think I already love this little thing. And so I had work the next day, the next morning, and I went to work and I told everybody, like, I normally am the kind of person, even during retail days, I would stay as late as I needed to, as late as possible. Like, I never was the kind of person to look at the clock and be like, okay, everybody, bye-bye. Like, everyone usually had to kick me out of my job. But that day, I was like, look, I gotta leave right after. Like, I gotta leave right the fuck now, basically. Like, I have to leave as soon as I'm ready. And so the people who were on shift with me were like, oh my gosh, I told them the story about the lizard. But the management coming in to relieve me, they were just like, why is she being so ridiculous? Like, why is she? And they were just like, oh, she's just rushing out of here, da da da. I was like, look, I don't have time for this. I gotta get my child. I went back to the pet store and I found her. And she was there. And she was still so cute and so little. And the same person that was working there was there that day. And she fished her out for me again. And Emerald put her little tummy on me. And I was like, yeah, I would literally kill everyone and then myself for you. And I loved her immediately. Him at the time, I was like, he's so perfect. Emerald was so small that I could fit her in a tall, iced Starbucks cup with a lid. And so, this is April. I don't move from Chicago to Washington until November. And so for a few months, I go on a trip and my mom takes care of Emerald. During that time, like, we did go to the vet because she ended up developing her first round of what is called mouth rot. And this is when I first started realizing that there is something to be said about, the general rule of thumb when it comes to a species, when it comes to experts. But there were certain things that I was doing, hypervigilantly following directions, and it just wasn't working for her. They wanted humidity levels a certain way. They wanted heat and basking, and not they, but just like the rules around geckos and lizards are so interesting because if I moistened her too much, she gets mouth rot. Even though the tank has the humidity levels right where it needs to be, after the second time, and again, like I said, she was so small. I didn't have her in a carrier until she was much older because she literally could fit inside of a tall cup. So I would get a cup from the coffee place right around the corner from the store I was working at in the mall. I'd plop her in there, put the lid on, and put her in the cup holder and drive her to appointments. That's how small she was. And one of the big things was that she's just very small. So, she couldn't be left unattended and stuff like that, obviously. Like, she's small now for 10, to be honest. But at the time, like, even the food, like, one of the things that they say can happen is if you put too many, like, crickets in the terrarium with the gecko, and especially baby ones, the crickets will just eat the gecko. So I remember lots and lots of sleepless nights, terrified of what would happen to her, and so I was up I was researching, I was keeping her enriched and socialized with, me and others taking care of her. And I feel like if I'm going to talk about her, you got to look at her. I don't know. But it was so much trial and error. I didn't have any friends at the time that had any geckos. So, like, it's just this little bean and me being a weirdo for a while. And then we had to move. I was terrified. She was not a year old yet. And so I reached out to a herpetologist online that, had a lot of views, was really popular, very knowledgeable. And I was like, look, like, my family and I are moving across country. We're moving from Chicago, Illinois to Washington State. Is my lizard gonna die only months after I got her? Like, what do I do? And he reached back out, really kind. I cannot remember for the life of me. Like I said, this is 10 years ago, so I'm like, I don't even remember this dude's name, but I was so grateful because he put my mind at ease. He gave me incredible tips and tricks to make sure she was comfortable during that trip. And it was like a long trip. Like, we're talking 4 to 5 days of driving, especially because that was the same weekend that same time frame. No, I'm getting my wires crossed. No, it wasn't a 4 to 5 day. Was it 3 to 4 to 5, something like that? Luckily I had a road dog, but I had someone with me. I had my stepsister with me who helped to drive with me, and it was just me, her, and Emerald in this car. We took pictures, and we followed my stepdad. My mom had to, like, kind of forward ahead. It was hard. No, my stepsister didn't help me. I'm lying. I was by myself for that road trip. So it was just me and Emerald on this road trip, driving from Chicago to Seattle. Oh my gosh, 27. I'm right. Yeah, I was by myself. It was a crazy long trip. I was worried the entire time. And, by then I had, been to Europe and back, broke up, got with my high school sweetheart. There's all kinds of things going on with me personally. And this little dude is just riding along in the car with everything. Just all of the, like, music and the everything. So I get to Washington State, and that's where she spent the majority of her childhood. Much colder in Washington than Chicago, I'll admit. Collectively, Chicago got snow, like Washington does, but Chicago felt like there was a summer. It was colder than I would have liked, but there was still, like, more pretty weather in Illinois than there was in Washington, as far as, like, all of the mucky rain and stuff. It's just very new. Like, Washington's just a very rainy place, and cooler. And I was super scared that she was not going to make it because, desert dwelling animal, horrible temperatures, whatever. And I spent that first year in Washington, the majority of the time, just worried that I wasn't doing anything right. We had a couple of accidents where we had to go to the vet. I was so scared. And I was really depressed. I had experienced some hardships between relationships, between trauma from previous places, and so Washington was just kind of when I imploded almost. And even through that implosion, even when I think that was just probably the darkest and hardest time of my life. Emerald was there. She was taken care of. She was what I poured a lot of my positive energy into. But also, I overcompensated a lot with her. That was a time where I was learning a lot about myself and my own needs, and where I learned to listen. She taught me how to listen. She taught me that sometimes too much is too much. She taught me that sometimes it's better to let her regulate her own temperatures than to try to overcompensate and regulate it for her. She taught me that shedding old, useless things and digesting it serve as nutrients, but if you do not get all of that old dead skin off, you can lose pieces of yourself. And even then, she taught me that sometimes you lose pieces of yourself, and there's nothing that you could have done better. And that you still have to live past that. She taught me patience and gentleness. She taught me that firmness does not have to be aggression. She's so little, and she was so much tinier, and helping her shed the stuff off of her toes was nerve-wracking. But I learned ways to interact with her that to this day make her feel safe with me and with others. She's very docile. She's very food motivated. She's very nappy. She loves to nap. Yes. Yeah. You like to nap and eat, huh? She's very gooey and soft. And so I recognized, oddly, a lot of myself in her. And I think that was the first time, 33:33 on the timer, this is the first time that I understood truly what it was like to be very vulnerable. And even still, that was 10 years ago. 10 years later, I would say that she continues to teach me more things. She teaches me sometimes when I notice it's been a few days since she's come out to look around. I'll look inside of her hiding spot and I see her just laying there with this serene kind of look on her face. By herself, in solitude, no noise, nothing, just in that little airplane of hers, just she teaches me still the importance of rest. She teaches me still that You don't need to know much to be a good judge of character. Emerald has had many visitors. She's very sweet. She has only bitten me twice in our life. The first time was straight up an accident, and the second time I pissed her off. And the second time was actually pretty recent because we were doing a vet visit and they wanted me to give her some things, and she was like, leave me the fuck alone. Didn't hurt. Wasn't shocking in that way. It was just kind of like, oh wow, she's very, very chill. And I've known that a lot of geckos are not very chill. So I got lucky. As you can see, her arm's just dangling. This little arm is just dangling. Yeah, I think that's what I learned. I learned a lot from having this animal, and I learned a lot not only from taking care of her, but also in the ways that I had to be accountable and caring of myself. She deserves softness and love and care. See that little belly? She deserves softness, love, and care. She deserves adventure. So it took me 10 years to realize that, yeah, we've been on a ton of road trips since then. She's moved from Chicago to Washington, from Washington to Florida, from Florida to Tennessee, from Tennessee back to Florida, from Florida to New Mexico, from New Mexico back to Florida, and then between Tennessee and Florida, and eventually, soon, she will be a Boston girly. And in all of it, her needs are to rest, to recover, to look around, see what's going on, understand her terrain. It's not that she doesn't trust me or that she's afraid. It's that this is all a new world. She really only knows the confines of her terrarium usually, and even then, like, it takes a long time for geckos to kind of acclimate to changes in their surroundings because it's just so jarring, like their little world. And so I would say, to wrap all this up, because I just hopped on here and said, have you hung out with anyone? Have you been socializing? One thing I guess I could say is that she does not look down when she walks. So, like, if I'm not here watching her six, she will walk off of anything. The bed that I'm on, for instance, this is probably like a scary thing to say while I'm holding this lizard, but like I would never let anything happen to her. And so I think that's one of the things that she knows about me and why she would rather climb all over me. She used to actually climb up my shirt. I'm curious if she can still do it. She used to like climb up and, in my hair and everything like that. She's older now, so she's not like, she'll explore, but she hasn't done that in a while. She has I wish you could see her little butt. Look at those little legs. Look at my little chunk monk. Anyway, sorry, let me shut up. She trusts me. And so sometimes the blind trust, I didn't think I was going there, but okay. Sometimes, and my grandpa's looking right at me right now from this picture frame, sometimes blind trust feels like you're on a ledge. And you don't know what's beneath you, or if there is anything beneath you, but you feel the compulsion to move. And you move with the knowledge and confidence that whatever you do, something is going to be there to catch you. Emerald taught me not only to trust in her process of exploring and living her life. She's dependent on me in a lot of ways, but if I give her the environment that she needs, she can do a lot on her own too. What she needs most from me at this stage of her life is to know beyond shadow of a doubt that I will be there to catch her whenever she feels moved to move. What she needs from me is the knowledge that she is safe to roam and explore. That's right. Oh my gosh, like, look at her. Like, I wish you could just see the spread eagle of her legs. She's so cute. I can't. Look at that little chick. Look at it. If I would eat them legs. Ow. I'm sorry, I love her. But beyond shadow of a doubt, she knows that wherever she moves, I'm there. And I will be there. And she is loved and cared for. And so if she needs to move, she knows she is safe to move. Because she knows after 10 years, I'm there. Every time. I don't know what kind of altar call I am making up, but I felt moved to come on here with my baby and share the blessing of this relationship with you guys. She has changed colors and spots so many times. The thing that has remained exactly the same is the top of her head. It's still green between her eyes, and she has this like pattern on the top of her head that's always, I honestly can't think of a time where it wasn't there. Like I said, her spots have changed. She used to have a striped tail, and now it's definitely more spotted, like her head. And she's always had this like almost like a bull symbol on the top of her head. I don't want to bother her because she seems very content and whatnot, but maybe I'll post a picture. But she has this like almost like a Taurus symbol on the top of her head, where the green spot, like right up underneath the green spot towards the back of her head. And anyways, she has changed so much over the last 10 years, and so have I. I've changed my spots. I've gotten a ton of tattoos since then. I didn't start getting tattoos until after I moved to Washington, so when we met, we were both just in our baby skins with all of our little baby spots. And now, here we are 10 years later, and even when she feels like exploring, you can see that little belly right up on there. Just all her little weight. So I guess the question of have you socialized, how are you doing, was really just me telling myself and you, whoever's watching, take inventory. I think you've grown more than you think. And the path that you've taken thus far has led you to a place where now all you have to do is tell yourself 44 on the timer that you can trust yourself to move because you will catch yourself every time. What do you think, bud? I think that's it. Well, I love you. Emerald may or may not love you. I don't know. She may just want to eat you. I believe Emerald thinks that anything that's near her is a giant worm that she just needs to prepare to consume. Hug and love and kiss on your pets today if you have any. If not, go to a friend's house. No, I'm playing. But seriously, sometimes you just need to reflect out loud about the growth you've done. And sometimes that reflection comes from the eyes of beings around you that were there the whole time. Baby, the whole time. You've been here for almost... Actually, I shouldn't say almost, but half my life. Over half my life. Under half my life. God, I'm 30. Yeah, I gotta go. That stressed me out. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye.